is for forgiveness. Forgiveness towards those who may have hurt you. Many of us, most of us, have encountered something in our past. It may not be a person, but quite often it is a person or an incident that has caused you hurt or pain or fear. And we find it very difficult to forgive them. Now, I want to just break down something that was said to me, and at first I didn't get it. And I want to share it with you because eventually I did, and it freed me from the prison that I had placed myself in. I'd like you to understand that forgiveness doesn't condone what that person did. I'll say it again. Forgiveness does not condone what that person did. Forgiveness frees you from the prison that you trap yourself in to protect yourself. And I hope that makes sense, because I don't want to belittle anything that's happened to any one of you. But in my circumstance, I placed myself in a virtual prison cell where nobody could get to me, where I couldn't be harmed or hurt anymore. And so I can almost visualize myself in this, crouch in a corner, in a prison cell with locked bars. And then around the prison cell was a sort of barbed wire exterior so that nobody could get to me. No one was going to hurt me again. No one was going to affect my life the way that person had affected my life. Not again. And yet, as I continued on in my walk with Christ, I discovered that my calling and my purpose for God cannot be effective if I am not in communication or in contact with anybody. And so the giftings that He has given me have to be used and displayed and used for service. If I'm not serving others, I'm not being effective for Christ. So I had a choice to make, and it took me a period of time, and it took me sessions of counselling, and I'm not ashamed of that. I mean, in the US, having therapy is much like doing your weekly shopping. It's almost a standard thing where people will spend time one-on-one with a trained professional working through some of their issues, whereas in the UK, it's not quite so popular, and if it is happening, it's very secretive. I found my counselling sessions, and I only had 5 of them, but by the end of the first session, I realised that the very reason that I had gone to counselling, knowing and seeing how it was affecting my relationships, my marriage, my children, I knew I had to do something. And I knew it had to be outside help, because the people that know you and love you tend to want to hug you and put their arms around you and provide for you and support you and feed you and do all of those things. But that isn't necessarily all you need. Those things are wonderful because you need to feel cared for and loved, and somewhat needed. But actually your healing needs to begin. And so my counselling session, by the end of the first session, I discovered that the real reason that I was there wasn't so much about the incident that had happened. It was more about how I thought and felt about myself. And that's when I began to break through. Now, I'd like to add that I did go to a Christian counsellor, and I went to an older person who had some life experience, somebody who I vaguely knew but didn't know enough to feel so uncomfortable that I didn't want to be there. But I found it incredibly helpful, and I'd signed up for 6 sessions and only completed 5 of them, because she said to me, "You're more than welcome to come back again next week, but I think we're done." And the importance of that statement is knowing when to stop, because what can happen is you then become over-reliant on that person who can talk you through. And some people may need, 12 sessions. They may need 12 months. It depends on how deep it goes and how much healing you need. But for me, I didn't overstep the mark by carrying on in something that was no longer needed. I had completed that task, and it was time to move on. The two things, love and unforgiveness, cannot operate together. Because if you're saying that you want to offer love to somebody, but you don't forgive them, or you don't forgive somebody else for doing something that they have done to you, remember that the battle belongs to the Lord. So whatever they have done to you, God will deal with that. Don't take that on. Don't be angry and bitter, thinking that that is stopping that person from progressing in life. They have moved on. And even if they haven't, that's not your issue. God will deal with that. And you'll get to a place where you can begin to pray for them. And you may not pray with love in the first instance. You may not pray good things for them, but you can pray for them that they will have an opportunity to meet with God just as you have, and that God can do a work in them. Yeah. And that may be further down the line for you. But it's important to understand that you wanting to be in a relationship with somebody and offer that person love, I presume you'd want to, it can be very difficult to do that when you're carrying bitterness and anger and frustration and fear from your past. So that person that you're joining yourself to will be deprived of the very thing that they are going into a relationship for. You know, the love and the companionship and all of that. You won't be able to give yourself fully. And I'm speaking from experience here. In my disobedience of dealing with my past, God prevented my marriage from happening until I had obeyed him. And I will share more about that with you. I also have it all written in my book, +1=3. And it breaks down the whole journey and the whole story from before I was saved up until present day. So if you want to get hold of the book and understand more about what I'm saying, I don't have long enough here to go into the detail. But if you want to know more about that, +1=3 is available on Amazon under my name, Sonia Harris. Have a read and see whether you can relate to anything that's written in there, and see whether you are operating and living in a place of bitterness, anger, fear. It doesn't always display itself as outwardly angry, but you may be wrapping yourself in protection and not offering the fullness of what the other person that you desire to be with rightfully deserves.